إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الكلام كلام الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وبعد. Returning back then to this, which should be the final sitting with the speech of Imam ibn Katheer around the Tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha. Inshallah. Should be. We mentioned a few weeks ago that that would be the case, but no doubt, Ikhwan, that which was present required that we sat, Ikhwan, and discuss some of the speech of Imam ibn Katheer. But in this session, I'm almost sure that we'll finish the Tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah ta'ala. Ikhwan, as far as the last session is concerned, you remember that Imam ibn Katheer began a summary of the ma'ani, or some of that which is present within, or the meanings of that which is present within Surah Al-Fatiha, and that occurred in the second to last fasl, or the second to last section, where he mentions فصل اشتملت هذه السورة الكريمة وهي 7 آيات على حمد الله وتمجيده والثناء عليه بذكر أسماء الله أو بذكر أسمائه الحسنى المستلزمة لصفاته العلى أو العليا. That he mentioned that the Surah Al-Fatiha, it has within it this Surah Al-Karima, that it has 7 ayat, 7 verses that comprise of praise of Allah Azza wa Jal, glorifying Him, sending thana upon Him and extolling Him by mentioning His names, those names that, or those beautiful names that necessitate lofty attributes. And no doubt Al-Imam ibn Katheer with that statement establishes the belief of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah concerning the Asma'i or the Asma'illahi Al-Husna, and that is that within or from the belief of Ahlul Sunnah concerning the names of Allah Azza wa Jal is that every name comprises of a sifa, that the names are not just names, يعني not just a'lam and not just titles that are given to Allah Azza wa Jal, but rather the names comprise of sifat. So when we say that Allah Azza wa Jal is Ar-Rahman, that necessitates sifatul Rahmah. When we say that Allah Azza wa Jal is Al-Aziz, it necessitates sifatul Izzah, and so on. And so the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, the beautiful names of Allah, all of them necessitate sifat. All of them comprise and have within them sifat. And that is the meaning of the statement of the Imam here. He mentions that in it has praise of Allah, tamjeed of Allah Azza wa Jal, extolling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by mentioning His beautiful names that necessitate His lofty attributes. He likewise mentions وعن ذكر المعاد. It has within it the mention of al-ma'ad, يعني the return yawm al-qiyamah. And the mention of the return similarly had in it, if you remember, a mention of one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that which is related to the names and the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, Maliki Yawmiddin. And we mentioned, Ikhwan, that from the names of Allah subhanahu is that Allah is Al-Malik, and that the affair of Allah being Al-Malik is no doubt from the attributes and from the names that Allah Azza wa Jal will refer to Himself by way of Yawm al-Qiyamah. And that Allah Azza wa Jal will roll the earth up and He will have that in His right hand, and He will say, Ana al-Malik, Ayna muluk al-ard. أين الجبارون أين المتكبرون. That he will say, I am the king, and where are the kings of the earth? And as we mentioned, Ikhwan, that is a reference here to the Jabbarun and the Mutakabbirun from among the Muluk, and that it is not a prohibition against a leader being referred to as a king. We established that which was related to the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal made from His prophets and His messengers kings, from His prophets. Sulaiman, Dawood, and others were kings. And likewise, that Allah Azza wa Jal offered the messenger to be a king, or to be a king and a prophet, or to be a Rasul and a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, he mentions وعن ذكر المعاد, it has in it the mention of the return يوم القيامة. وعلى إرشاده عبيده إلى سؤاله والتضرع إليه. So it mentions the return on the day of judgment and all of those things. Ikhwan, if you consider the surah in and of itself, it has in it every single issue or everything that the believer should be reflecting upon throughout his day and throughout his life. Allah Azza wa Jal, the Tawheed of Allah, the oneness of Allah subhanahu, the names and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that which is related to the establishment of the ibadah that Allah Azza wa Jal necessitates, or that He wants from His servants to establish. Just as Imam ibn al-Qayyim, and we've mentioned it Ikhwan time and time again, that Imam ibn al-Qayyim mentioned that the Quran from its beginning to its end is Tawheed. That it has in it that which is related to the rububiyyah of Allah. If you read in the Quran, Allah mentions that He is the creator, the sustainer, that He is the one that gives life and takes life, that He is the one that arranges the affairs and so on, and that is the Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Or we read in the Quran that which is related to the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that He is Al-Ghafur, Al-Rahim, Al-Aziz, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, Al-Salam, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, that which is related to the Asma' wa Sifat of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is the second category of Tawheed. And it has in it the command of Allah Azza wa Jal to His servants to establish the worship of Allah subhanahu. I'budullah, ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh. Ya ayyuhan nas, i'budu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum. Commands throughout the Quran with the establishment of the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Or we have that Allah Azza wa Jal commands His servants with the establishment of acts of ibadah, or the commands and staying away from the prohibitions, which, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, are the rights of Tawheed. Or we have in it that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that which is related to nations and individuals that He aided, that He established them upon the earth, that He gave victory to them after their patience and so on, and that is or the fruit of the establishment of Tawheed. Or we have in it that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions how He punished the people and how He rained various forms of adhab upon them, and how they were disobedient to Allah Azza wa Jal, and how He punished them on the basis of their dhunub, and how He punished them on the basis of them not establishing the worship to Allah and the shirk that they were upon, and that no doubt is a recompense of not establishing Tawheed. And so just as the Quran itself, Ikhwan, has all of those effects within it, reflect similarly upon Surah Al-Fatiha. In the similar vein, that we have that which Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned about the whole of the Quran, we have that present likewise in Surah Al-Fatiha. You remember we mentioned that which is related to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We had that which is related to Tawheed al-Asma' wa Sifat, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawm Ad-Din. We have that which is related to the establishment of the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Iyaka na'bud wa Iyaka nasta'een. We have that which is related to the path or the way of those who Allah has aided and supported and granted aid to and help to after their patience, from the prophets and the messengers and the people of Tawheed. And we have that present in Surah Al-Fatiha, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim. And likewise we have in it the mention of that which is related to those individuals whom Allah punished and whom Allah turned from them individuals into qiradata wal khanazir, and from them those who He cursed, and from them, Ikhwan, are those who He caused the earth to open up and swallow. And those same individuals are present likewise in Surah Al-Fatiha, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. And so that which is mentioned concerning the whole of the Quran is likewise mentioned, Ikhwan, concerning Surah Al-Fatiha, and thus we have the station of Surah Al-Fatiha being established, Ikhwan, and we likewise have the fact that it has in it the embodiment of the whole of the Quran al-Kareem. Now, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, or Ibn Katheer afwan, he continues, وَالتَّبَرُّءُ مِنْ حَوْلِهِمْ وَقُوَّتِهِمْ وإلى إخلاص العبادة له وتوحيد وتوحده بالألوهية تبارك وتعالى وتنزيهه أن يكون له شريك أو نذير أو مماثل. And he mentions that which is related similarly to being humble and having humility in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that which Allah has guided His worshippers to from asking from Him or asking of Him, and freeing themselves of having any hawl or any quwwah, yani having any ability to change something from one state to another for themselves, or having the power or the might to establish the worship to Allah Azza wa Jal except by way of Him. And likewise, it has in it asking Allah Azza wa Jal to guide them to the straight path. And he mentioned وَهُوَ الدِّينُ الْقَوِيمُ, and that straight path is the Deen al-Qawim. And as we mentioned in the earlier sessions, Ikhwan, we even have the guidance to the Manhaj al-Salafi within the Surah al-Fatiha, يعني اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. And that no doubt is a guidance to the methodology of the path of our Salaf and those who are the Salihin. Likewise, he mentions وتثبيتهم عليه حتى يقضي لهم بذلك إلى جواز الصراط الحسي يوم القيامة المفضي بهم إلى جنات النعيم في جوار النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. That he mentioned, and it has in it, or that question that they ask, or the supplication that they make to Allah Azza wa Jal, has in it the supplication for them to remain firm upon the Sirat al-Mustaqim, that Sirat that leads them or causes them to pass over the real Sirat, the Sirat al-Hissi. He mentions, rahimahullah, Yawm al-Qiyamah. That on the basis of traversing the Sirat al-Mustaqim in their lives, then that will cause them to pass over the Sirat al-Hissi, the true Sirat, Yawm al-Qiyamah, that Sirat al-Mufdi bihim ila jannatin na'im. That sirat that leads them, or that will carry them to the Jannatin Na'im, to the gardens of bliss, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us from its inhabitants. He said, في جواري النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين, in the companionship of the Nabiyyin, of the prophets, والصديقين, and the truthful, والشهداء والصالحين, and the martyrs and the righteous. And that no doubt is mentioned in an ayah, وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. And it has in it an encouragement to establish righteous worship. And he mentioned, Ikhwan, and you'll remember in the last session, we discussed those points of benefit and those, if you like, the summary of that which was present in Surah, something from the summary of that which is present within Surah Al-Fatiha. An issue, Ikhwan, that is related to Surah Al-Fatiha is that which is related to and after understanding its meaning, we perhaps will understand the reason for the fact that the qira'ah or the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha is a rukn from the arkan of Salah. That it is a rukn from the arkan of Salah, is a pillar from the pillars of Salah, that a person recites Surah Al-Fatiha. Though no doubt the qira'ah of Fatiha is an issue that Ahl al-Ilm have discussed throughout time. That is particularly the issue of the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha behind the Imam. Is it to be recited behind the Imam or not? And Ikhwan, those of you who are familiar with Sifatul Salat al-Nabi, and those of you who are not, then I would encourage you to return back to read Sifatul Salat al-Nabi, the Prophet's prayer described of Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani, for indeed he discusses the issue of the rukniyah of Surah Al-Fatiha, the fact that it is a rukn from the arkan of Salah, and he similarly discusses that which is related to the fact that it should be recited, and then he mentions those instances where it is, or its recitation is left. And from the instances where its recitation is left is no doubt when the Imam is reciting. And he mentions a number of narrations concerning that, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned, as occurs in an authentic hadith, when he mentioned that إِنَّمَا جُئِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ, that the Imam was established to be followed. So when he makes takbir, you make takbir. When he makes ruku', you make ruku'. When he makes sujood, you do likewise. وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَأَنصِتُوا, and when he recites, then remain quiet. When he recites, then remain quiet. And Sheikh Nasir mentions that that command to remain quiet during the recitation of the Imam is one that revolves around whether he recites Fatiha or other than Fatiha. The intent is his qira'ah, yani qira'ah of the Quran, it includes Fatiha and other than Fatiha. Likewise, we have the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, wherein Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, فَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. That if the Quran is being recited, then be quiet and listen to it, that perhaps you may achieve mercy. That here Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us, ikhwan, with two affairs, although one necessitates the other, that you be quiet when the Quran is recited and that you listen, that you remain silent and that you listen. And that includes whether one is in Salah or outside of the Salah. Shaykh Nasir likewise mentions, ikhwan, as occurs in Sifatul Salah, the Asl or the original version, that he mentions the fact that the prohibition of the recitation of Fatiha was something that occurred over stages. That there was a period where it was made permissible, and then over a gradual period, the Messenger of Allah prohibited it outright. And for a period it was allowed, as occurs in the hadith, when the Messenger of Allah, he turned round and said, why is it that I am competing with some of you with the recitation or with my recitation of the Quran, as some of the companions used to recite behind the Messenger along with him. And so he turned around after the Salah and said, why is it that I'm competing with you or with some of you with my recitation of the Salah of the Quran? لا تفعلوا إلا بفاتحة الكتاب. He said, do not do so except with Fatihat al-Kitab, except with Surah al-Fatiha. Shaykh Nasir mentions that that was a stage from the stages of the prohibition of its recitation, and then it was made outright prohibited with the statement of the Messenger that if he recites, فَأَنصِتُوا, if he recites, then remain quiet. If he recites, yani the Imam, then remain quiet. And likewise, he mentions a hadith, ikhwan, that is sufficient for any ma'mun, for any individual that stands behind the Imam in Salah. And that is the statement of the Messenger of Allah, قِرَاءَةُ الْإِمَامِ قِرَاءَةٌ لِمَنْ وَرَاءَهُ, that the recitation of the Imam is recitation for one who is behind him. And that is sufficient, ikhwan, for us to understand and know that the correct position is to remain silent behind the Imam if the Imam is reciting, that is whether it is Fatiha or other than Fatiha. And another issue that is discussed is for those who hold that you should recite regardless, and that the rak'ah is null and void if one does not recite. Then there are a number of issues that require substantiating by way of evidence. And that is, if one does recite behind the Imam, then where and at which point does he do so? And what are the evidences that indicate that was what was carried out and practiced by the companions of the Messenger of Allah? For indeed, ikhwan, the affair of recitation behind the Imam is and can be an arduous one and a difficult one, depending no doubt on the Imam and depending on the nature of the recitation of the ma'mun, of the one who's behind the Imam. And so the issue that arises is, do you recite in the gaps? After he recites an ayah, then you recite that ayah? Do you recite when he finishes the complete recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha? And in both cases, there is usually not sufficient, there's not a sufficient space or a sufficient amount of time for you to recite, whether it be you're reciting the ayah after he recites an ayah. The gap and the pause that he has between each verse is usually not sufficient for you to recite. And so you end up reciting with either with speed or not being able to complete the ayah. Or do you recite at the end or after he has recited the whole of the surah? Again, that that is something, as some of you'll find in some of the books of fiqh, that he should give, or the Imam should give them a period. Yeah, and he should pause and give them a period in order for them to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Again, allowing or giving that allowance is something that requires evidence. And then, Ikhwan, we have and there are a number of issues revolving around the affair of Surah, or the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha. There is an evidence, or there's a hadith likewise that Shaykh Nasir mentions, that is collected by Imam ibn Khuzaymah in his Sahih, that mentions, that has in it, Ikhwan, that which necessitates that if a person did not recite Fatiha in this instance, then his salah, his rak'ah is not null and void, as some would advocate. And that is that the Messenger ﷺ said that if a person enters the masjid and catches the Imam in ruku' before he straightens his sulb, before he straightens his back from ruku', فَقَدْ أَدْرَكَ الرَّكْعَةِ, then verily he has caught the rak'ah. So if a person enters a salah, the Imam, he's saying Sami Allahu li, but he hasn't straightened his back, and that individual enters Allahu Akbar and is able to make ruku' and then rise from ruku', then verily he's caught the rak'ah. بنص النبوي, with a prophetic text. Thus, the question arises that if the person then catches that rak'ah, or catches that Imam prior to him straightening his back, and as the Messenger ﷺ, he said that whoever does so, then he's caught the rak'ah, then where did he recite Surah Al-Fatiha? There was no recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha in that instance, yet still the Messenger ﷺ established and affirmed that he has caught the rak'ah. And thus, Ikhwan, that would necessitate the fact that the rak'ah, if it is caught, or in those instances where we have that which is textual, that allows for one to leave the recitation of Fatiha, then it is left in accordance with those texts. The discussion is one that is that has been continuing for years, Ikhwan, and decades, and it is not one that you'll possibly find itilaf and complete unity upon, Ikhwan, at any time. There's always going to be, and Allah knows best, there are always going to be differences concerning the issue, but no doubt the position of the Talib Ilm is to try his best to come to that which is closest to the evidences, that which is closest to correctness, and cling to that. The last issue then that is to be discussed in the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha is that which occurs in this last fasl, or this last section, and that is a section that begins with the statement of the Imam: فصل يستحب لمن قرأ الفاتحة أن يقول بعدها آمين. He says, section, it is desirable for the one that recites Al-Fatiha to say after it Ameen. It is desirable for the one who recites Fatiha to say after it Ameen. He said مثل Yasin, and that may not be in some of the prints of Ibn Katheer, whether you're working through the Umdat Tafsir of Sheikh Ahmad Shakir, or you're even working with the original Tafsir itself. That statement, Mithl Yasin, as it was not present in some manuscripts, but it is present no doubt in some. That is Ameen, which is recited like Yasin. When he's saying Mithl Yasin, yani that it is recited like Yasin. Ameen, like Yasin. He said, وَيُقَالُ Ameen. He said, it is likewise said Ameen. بالقصر أيضا, يعني بالقصر, and that is shortened or without the mad upon the alif, without the elongation upon the initial letter Ameen. It is permissible to say Ameen, Ameen, and that carries the same meaning as Ameen. He mentioned وَمَعْنَاهُ اللَّهُمَّ اسْتَجِبْ, that he said that the meaning of it, and here he highlights the meaning of the statement Ameen, is O Allah istajib, O Allah answer our prayers. So when a person recites Surah Al-Fatiha and those who are behind him, they say Ameen, then in essence they are saying, O Allah answer our prayers. Yani all of these forms of supplication that are present within Surah Al-Fatiha, this thana, this tamjeed, this hamd of Allah Azza wa Jal, and praise of Allah Subhanahu, all of that, and then the subsequent dua and supplication that the worshipper makes, at the end of that, those who are behind him, then they say Ameen, and that is, oh Allah, answer our supplication. He said, وَالدَّلِيلُ عَلَى إِسْتِحْبَابِ التَّأْمِينِ ما رواه الإمام أحمد وغيره عن وائل ابن حجر رضي الله عنه قال سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قرأ غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين فقال آمين مد بها صوته. He said that I heard Wa'il ibn Hujr as an evidence, he mentions prior to that, an evidence for the desirable nature of saying Ameen, that which is collected by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, upon other than Imam Ahmad, upon the authority of Wa'il ibn Hujr, who said that I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, and then he said Ameen مد بها صوته. He said that he stretched his voice with it, or he recited it by elonging the letter, يعني آمين. ولأبي داود نعم رفع بها صوته, and in the version that occurs in Abu Dawood, that he raised his voice with it. And so that no doubt is a clear refutation, ikhwan, against those who say that the Ameen is not to be recited if one is in congregation, or if one recites in the Salah, that one does not recite the Ta'meen aloud. That you say it to yourself and you do not say it aloud, as some say. That no doubt, ikhwan, is rebutted by this clear hadith here, which is authentic, and that is the statement of the Messenger of Allah, or the narration or the version of the hadith of Wa'il ibn Hujr here, wherein it mentions رَفَعَ بِهَا صَوْتَهُ, that he raised his voice with it. And there are some narrations that mention that when the companions did so, that the masjid rang with the volume of their voices, saying Ameen. Now, he continues, rahimahullah ta'ala, قال أصحابنا وغيرهم ويستحب ذلك لمن هو خارج الصلاة والتأكد في حق المصلي وسواه كان نعم سواء كان منفردا أو إماما أو مأمونا. Again, ويستحب ذلك لمن هو خارج الصلاة ويتأكد في حق المصلي وسواء كان منفردا أو إماما أو مأموما. He said that it is desirable likewise for one who is outside of Salah, yani to say Ameen at the end of Surah Al-Fatiha. That is likewise desirable, since it is a dua and it is a supplication. And he mentions نعم وهو, and it is more established, or يتأكد, yani it is emphasized as it relates to the musalli, the one who is praying, whether he is praying munfarida, yani whether he is praying by himself, or imama, or as an imam, or ma'muman, or as the ma'mun, that is the one who is praying behind the imam. And so the statement Ameen after the qira'ah, or the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha, is established for the one who prays alone, for the one who prays as the imam, and for the one who prays behind the imam. A person may say, well, why would I say it if I am the imam? Or why would I say it if I'm alone? All of that is established in the following nusus. He continues, وفي جميع الأحوال, and in all conditions, he mentions لما جاء في الصحيحين عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا أمن الإمام فأمنوا فإنه من وافق تأمين الملائكة غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. That he mentions that if, or one of the evidences for that is that which occurs in the Sahihain, and in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, upon the authority of Abu Hurraira radiyallahu anhu, who said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if the Imam says Ameen, then you say Ameen. Yani then all of you say Ameen. And whomsoever's ta'meen, yani whoever's statement Ameen is is in accordance with the ta'meen of the malaika, then his sins or his previous sins will be forgiven. And that is again here in that which is related to the one who prays behind the Imam. Bearing in mind, ikhwan, and pay attention to the wordings here, because they will help us understand when and how a person should say the Ameen when he's behind the Imam. Here, إِذَا أَمَّنَ الْإِمَامِ, if the Imam says Ameen, then you say Ameen. So here this hadith has in it a mention of the Imam saying Ameen. It has in it a mention of the Imam saying Ameen, then you say Ameen behind him. And whosoever's Ameen is in accordance with the Ameen of the Malaika, then his past sins will be forgiven. As far as a version that occurs in Sahih Muslim, then the version in Sahih Muslim mentions that the Messenger ﷺ said, إِذَا قَالَ أَحَدُكُمْ فِي الصَّلَاةِ آمين وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ فِي السَّمَاءِ آمين فَوَافَقَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. That he said that if one of you in his salah says Ameen, and the Malaika in the heavens say Ameen, and the two affairs coincide, then the previous or one's previous sins will be forgiven. One's previous sins will be forgiven. And this wording, this version of this hadith, encompasses those who make salah by themselves. Because here the Messenger ﷺ, he said, إِذَا قَالَ أَحَدُكُمْ فِي الصَّلَاةِ آمين, that if one of you says in salah Ameen, and the Malaika say Ameen with no mention of him being behind an Imam. And there's nothing that stipulates in the hadith that he is behind the Imam when he does so. And that encompasses the one who prays alone and the one who prays as the Imam. And so those two hadith in the wordings encompass the one who pray, those who pray alone, those who pray as the Imam, and those who pray behind the Imam. Ibn Katheer, he mentions rahimahullah, قيل بمعنى من وافق تأمينه تأمين الملائكة في الزمان. He now discusses that which is related to the meaning, or what does it mean, or what is understood from whomsoever's Ameen is in accordance with or agrees with the ta'meen of the Malaika. How do we understand that? He said that there are a number of statements or a number of positions concerning its meaning. He said, qila, it is said concerning its meaning that it means fi zaman, yani that whosoever makes the ta'meen at the same time as the Malaika, غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِ, then his previous sins will be forgiven. He said, وَقِيلَ فِي الْإِجَابَةِ, it is likewise said in al-ijaba, yani that is, as far as it relates to the Malaika having their dua responded to, then the meaning of it is, whomsoever's ta'meen is in accordance with the ta'meen of the Malaika, meaning whomsoever's ta'meen is responded to as theirs are, then he will have his previous sins forgiven. So this second position looks towards the fact that the Malaika have their ta'meen answered, and whomsoever then has his ta'meen answered, then he will have his previous sins forgiven. So the first version, that which is related to az-zaman, yani just muwafaqa, that is, that your statement fell or occurred at the same time as theirs, without a look or without looking towards that which is related to whether or not their dua was accepted. Just as long as your statement falls at the same time as theirs. Naturally, it's not something that we will know of. Something that returns back to the knowledge of the unseen. So one hopes that it occurred. In the second position, That second position has in it the statement fil ijaba, يعني that is as it relates to the dua being accepted, يعني their dua being accepted. Meaning then, whosoever's ta'meen is accepted as theirs are, then he would have his previous sins forgiven. And that again is an affair that remains in the unseen, that we do not know if Allah Azza wa Jal will accept our ta'meen from us. Going back to the meaning of ta'meen, which is Allahumma stajib. Oh Allah, accept my dua, or accept our dua. And so whomsoever makes that statement, Ameen, meaning Allahumma stajib, ajab, and has his dua accepted as the malaika do, then he will have his previous sins forgiven. He mentioned وَقِيلَ فِي صِفَةِ الْإِخْلَاصِ, and it is also said في صفة الإخلاص, يعني that whosoever's ikhlas, when he makes that statement, is like the ikhlas of the malaika. غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Whoever's ikhlas was like the ikhlas of the malaika. So be sincere, ikhwan, when you make that Ameen. Don't just say it because Salafis are supposed to say it loud. Rather, ikhwan, when we make that ta'meen, we hold that statement, ikhwan, understanding its meaning, remembering the fact that it is our making ta'meen and asking Allah to accept all of the ayat that have just passed. The supplication, اهدنا الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, reflect upon its meanings. Reflect upon the tremendous weight of the statement from its beginning, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, to its end, ولا الضالين. Reflect upon the standing Yawm al-Qiyamah. Reflect upon the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that which is present within His creation from tremendousness and from azama. Reflect upon that which is present, ikhwan, from the rahmah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu. Reflect upon that which is upon us from the purpose of our creation to establish the ibadah and the worship, and that we cannot do so and we cannot carry out that which we have been created for except by seeking isti'anah from Allah Azza wa Jal. Reflect upon the path of those who came before us and how much Allah has ennobled us and blessed us and favored us over kathirin min al-alameen. Reflect, ikhwan, upon the fact that there were individuals who were upon a path and then left that path and ended up being dhaleen and maghdubi alayhim. Reflect upon all of those affairs, ikhwan, and the ni'am of Allah Azza wa Jal with ikhlas and with sincerity, and then you think about the statement Ameen when you make it. And that, ikhwan, will help, no doubt, with having the ikhlas similar to the ikhlas of the malaika, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make that easy for us, ikhwan. He mentioned وفي صحيح مسلم عن أبي موسى مرفوعا إذا قال يعني الإمام ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين يجبكم الله. Another version of the hadith that is likewise authentic in Sahih Muslim is the hadith of Abi Musa that is marfu', which means raised to the Prophet ﷺ, يعني attributed to the Messenger ﷺ from his statement إذا قال, يعني if the Imam he says ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين, that if the Imam says ولا الضالين, then you say Ameen, يجبكم الله, then Allah Azza wa Jal will respond to you. This version of the hadith, ikhwan, is again for the one who has fiqh of it, will benefit you when you pray, ikhwan, behind that individual, that Hanafi individual that does not say Ameen, does not say the ta'meen. The first versions of the hadith, it mentions, and not that we advocate, ikhwan, generally, except that a person prays behind the people of Sunnah as much as one is able. But if he finds himself in a circumstance where he prays behind individuals who are not upon the way of Ahlus Sunnah, or not upon the way of the Salaf al-Salihun, or hold the madhab, ikhwan, that necessitates that they do not recite the ta'meen, or whatever ta'wil or interpretation they have for abandoning that, then if one prays behind an individual and does not hear the ta'meen, then what does he work with? He works with the version, Ikhwan, and the hadith of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. The hadith of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari does not have in it a mention of you hearing or necessitate you hearing the ta'meen. Rather, it mentions إذا قال يعني الإمام ولا الضالين فقولوا آمين. If the Imam says ولا الضالين, then you say Ameen. So it may be that an individual knows that the Imam is not going to say Ameen aloud. And so he's not waiting to hear it so that he may follow him in the utterance of Ameen. He knows he's not going to say it. So in that instance, here comes acting upon the hadith of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. If the Imam says وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, then that, Ikhwan, is where those who are behind him is where they say Ameen. Now, he mentions قال الأكثرون معناه اللهم استجب لنا. He said that the majority, they hold that its meaning is, oh Allah, answer the supplication for us. وقد قدمنا في المتفق عليه إذا أمن الإمام فأمنوا. We have already proceeded and have mentioned in that which is agreed upon by both Imam al-Bukhari and Muslim, the statement that if the Imam says Ameen, then you say Ameen. وأنه كان يؤمن إذا قرأ غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. And that he used to make the ta'meen, that he used to say Ameen when he would recite غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. And Ibn Majah, he mentions a narration that is as follows: ما حسدتكم اليهود على شيء من ما حسدتكم على السلام والتأمين. That indeed ما حسدتكم اليهود, the Yahud were not jealous of you. يعني يا معشر أمة Muhammad, the Yahud were not jealous of you upon anything the way that they are jealous of you of the salam and the ta'meen. Yani you're saying Ameen. And it is sufficient, Ikhwan, for you to be in Masjid al-Haram to understand why they would be jealous. And those of you, Ikhwan, who know or have been either Christian prior to becoming Muslim or Yahudi, will know, Ikhwan, the love and the desire of every priest and deacon to have the congregation make a unified statement in agreement with what he has said, and the joy that it brings to any priest or imam. Here we have, Ikhwan, the recitation of a supplication that, Ikhwan, nowhere in Christendom do we have the type of ta'meen or the type of agreement, unified agreement, voices raised, ikhlas and sincerity upon it, that we have, Ikhwan, with the ta'meen that has been prescribed for one to say after Surah Al-Fatiha. And that is established then by way of the statement of the Messenger of Allah that the Yahud are not jealous of you. And no doubt, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ, that he does not speak from his desires. It is purely, Ikhwan, revelation. Indeed, it is revelation sent down. That the Yahud are not jealous of you the way that they are jealous of your salam, or are jealous of you for your salam and your ta'meen, yani your statement, Ameen. Because they have a version, or that which is similar to it, Amen. And their Amen, Ikhwan, is in a congregation of 100, you probably have 15, 16, 20 individuals who make that statement. And sporadically throughout the congregation, you'll hear individuals saying it. There is no conviction or nothing, Ikhwan, present from the type of congregate or the unity that the Muslims have when they make that statement, and so they are envious of the Muslimun on the basis of that. قلت يهود قلت ومن هنا نزع بعضهم في الضلالة بهذه الآية. And the hadith, Ikhwan, is a hadith that occurs in the Sunnah of the Imam ibn Majah, and likewise the Sunnah of the Imam ibn Khuzaymah. And Sheikh Muqbil likewise collected the hadith in صحيح الجامع. نعم. قلت ومن هنا نزع بعضهم في الضلالة بهذه الآية الكريمة، وهي قوله تعالى: قال موسى ربنا إنك أتيت فرعون وملأه زينة وأموالا في الحياة الدنيا ربنا ليضلوا عن سبيل الله أو عن سبيلك ربنا اطمس على أموالهم واشدد على قلوبهم فلا يؤمنون حتى يروا العذاب الأليم قال قد أجيبت دعوتكما فاستقيما ولا تتبعان سبيل الذين لا يعلمون. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, Ikhwan, as occurs in Surah Yunus, the statement of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, and the utterance that he made in supplication. He said that some have discussed the affair or of that which is indicated within this verse, and that is the statement of Musa when Musa said, "O our Lord, Rabbana, indeed you have given Fir'aun and his gathering beautification beautification and wealth in the life of this world, that they may misguide individuals from the path of Allah. O Allah, destroy their wealth and make their hearts hard and let them not believe until they see the severe punishment." And then the following ayah mentions قَالَ قَدْ أُجِيبَتْ دَعْوَتُكُمَا, that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that indeed the supplication of both of you are accepted or is accepted. So remain upright. وَلَا تَتَّبِعَانِ سَبِيلَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, and do not follow, yani both of you, do not follow the path of those who do not know, yani the path of the ignorant. And so the discussion revolves around this statement, قَالَ قَدْ أُجِيبَتْ دَعْوَتُكُمَا, that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that indeed your supplication, the supplication of both of you, is accepted. He mentioned فَذَكَرَ الدُّعَاء عَنْ مُوسَى وَحْدَهُ ومن سياق الكلام لا يدل على أن هارون قال فذكر الدعاء عن موسى وحده ومن سياق الكلام ما يدل على أن هارون أمن فنزل منزلة من دعا لقوله تعالى قد أجيبت دعوتكما. He said that which is present in the verse is the dua of Musa alone. In the verse we have Musa making that dua. He mentioned, but the siyaq al-kalam, or the manner in which the sentence and the speech occurs, indicates that Harun was present making ta'meen. Yani that Harun was saying Ameen. That Harun was saying Ameen. فَنُزِلَ مَنْزِلَةَ مَنْ دَعَى. And so he was placed, or he was given the station of the one who actually was making dua. And that is in the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى قَدْ أُجِيبَتْ دَعْوَتُكُمَا, that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that verily the dua of both of you has been accepted. Well, it was only Musa that was making dua, and Harun was making ta'meen, Ameen. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned قَدْ أُجِيبَتْ دَعْوَتُكُمَا, the dua of both of you are accepted. And he mentioned, so when Harun was making the ta'meen, he was placed, or he was given the station or the position of one who actually made the dua, even though he only made the ta'meen, even though he only said Ameen. And then he mentioned فَدَلَّ ذَلِكَ عَلَىٰ أَنَّ مَنْ أَمَّنَ عَلَىٰ دُعَاءٍ فَكَأَنَّمَا قَالَهُ فَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ مَنْ قَالَ إِنَّ الْمَأْمُونَ لَا يَقْرَأ. Now, when we come to that, he mentions فَدَلَّ ذَلِكَ, so that indicates that the one who makes ta'meen, or the one who أَمَّنَ عَلَىٰ دُعَاءٍ, that the one who says Ameen after a dua, then it is as though he has made that dua. The one who says ta'meen, Ameen, after the dua, then it is as though he has made that dua. And for that reason, قال من قال إن المأمون لا يقرأ لأن تأمينه على قراءة الفاتحة بمنزلة قراءتها. He said, and for that reason, the one who says, or those who hold, that the ma'moon, or the one who is behind the imam in salah, that he does not recite, he meant that is Fatiha. He said لأن تأمينه على قراءة الفاتحة بمنزلة قراءتها, because when he says Ameen after the qira'ah of the Fatiha, then it is as though, or it is the same as if he has recited it himself. It is the same as if, or he has the station as if he has recited that himself. And that is, or adds strength to the position of those who say that the Fatiha is not recited if the Imam is reciting. If the Imam is quiet, then no doubt it is recited. But if the Imam is reciting, then no doubt that supports that. And then he mentions آخر تفسير سورة الفاتحة ولله الحمد والمنة. And that is the end of the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha. ولله الحمد والمنة. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Incidentally, Ikhwan, due to journeying and some of the travels that we're going to be embarking upon in the next few weeks, there is going to be a break between our ending Fatiha and beginning Surah Al-Baqarah now of 4 weeks. Now, so we return inshallah with the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, beginning with Alif Lam Mim, on the 19th of March, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Well, hopefully, Ikhwan, that was enough for you to digest and to think about until the 19th. No. Jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabina Muhammad wa akhir da'wana.